The Madman! The Year of the Raven is upon us. All the standard decks are going to change quite a bit, and as 3 sets rotate out. So here's a look at what all the decks are going to be losing. Let's start with the tier 1 decks and then work our way down. Q Block loses Mistress of Mixtures and N'Zoth. And we're done. And this is why a lot of people are very scared of Q Block. So a lot of research needs to be poured into how to beat Q Block. Here's a preliminary information on how to do so though. Aggro decks tend to be very strong against it, as long as they're not too board focused and have a way to get past the taunt. So specifically, the Secret Mage was good, the Pirate Warrior was good just because it got there so fast. Spiteful Summoner Priest was good because Mind Control is very good against Q Block, and Q Block doesn't necessarily have a way to deal with a really big cheated out 6 mana summoner result. And the summoners are getting better as the old gods 10 mana cards are rotating out, and overall 10 mana summons are going to be way bigger. With the loss of Mistress of Mixtures, Q Block opens itself up to even more aggro, defeating it. So Blizzard's keeping an eye on it, but wouldn't be too surprised if it actually doesn't end up being a problem. I'm optimistic, but definitely the Q Block will be the deck to watch out for and to try to beat, at least early on. Murloc Paladin loses quite a lot. They lose 4 of their big early game Murlocs and the Rallying Blade. Now it's only 6 cards, but the entire concept of Murloc Paladin was built up on a strong Murloc start. Now you don't have the Murlocs to Rockpool Hunter, you only have Murloc Tidecaller. So with that, it's not really worth running Rockpool Hunter or Murloc Tidecaller, and it's definitely not worth running Cold Light Seer, which means it's not worth running Murloc War Leader, which means it's not worth running Gentle Megasaur. So yeah, so we'll probably see a different form of the Aggro Paladin. Now on the other hand, for Dude Paladin, they're losing a few of the Dude synergies as well. So the Rallying Blade, the Steward of Darkshire, which is very important because it worked with Stand Against Darkness, which is also rotating though. So Stand Against Darkness was a pretty big deal. It helped activate Crystal Lion very cheaply. It helped have a bunch of stuff for Light Fuge Stegodon. Will this deck survive? It might still be a variant for sure. You could just put in the second Dry Gulch Jailer. You have the Vine Cleaver. Maybe you put in another one of those. So Dude Paladin loses quite a bit, but might actually still have a workable base given Dry Gulch Jailer and Vine Cleaver. That said though, if we tore down aggressive Paladin to its base and decided not to run the Light Fuge Stegodon and the Crystal Lion, the Vine Cleaver, and the Equality by elimination, you could perhaps put in 11 cards, especially with the new expansion coming around. That would fit into this tempo style as well. This deck is carried by Call to Arms. You just need efficient minions. But this is the base. I think there will still be some sort of Aggro Paladin around for sure. And our final tier 1 deck, Combo Priest, loses quite a few of the dragons. Draconid Operative, Bookworm, another Spite Historian, and the very important Potion of Madness, where you can't do the good old Twilight Acolyte their guy, Potion of Madness to steal it, and then buff it and kill them. So those are some pretty severe losses. You could fit in another dragon with Twilight Drake. You could fit in more dragons in order to activate the Duskbreaker and keep the Twilight Acolyte around, but not as good when you can't Potion of Madness cards. Inner Fire Divine Spirit is still going to be around, and Radiant Elemental and Shadow Visions will still be around. But it seems like we're going to need a new base for this. Oh, and Talon Priest. Talon Priest was importantly very good. So it's going to be pretty tough to run this Combo Priest. The dragons ended up being an extremely good complement to Combo Priest. And it's with the specific dragon package that Combo Priest managed to work, as well as Potion of Madness. Without, I think this deck will probably not really work. So of the tier 1 decks, looks like Q Block is the big winner and gets a target painted onto its back. Now going into the tier 2 decks, top of tier 2, arguably tier 1, is the Spiteful Summoner Priest. This deck is going to get a lot stronger. Well, the Spiteful Summoner is going to get a lot stronger because the old gods are getting removed. Very annoying 10 drops. Spiteful Summoner, though, does lose the dragon package of Historian and Operative, at least. And a very good card in Cabal Talon Priest. And this rather good Silence. Now, that's not too many losses, though. It's going to have a bigger weakness to aggressive decks, which it already did. Duskbreaker is going to be a lot less consistent if you're running the dragon version with only 4 other dragons. That said though, this could transition into, we could remove the dragons and add in Lady in White as well as a lot of the new cards. The power of the summoner is so high that one would be tempted to cut a Free from Amber also, just to get the 10 roll more often, maybe even both. But I think this deck will still be carried on from the power of Spiteful Summoner. Perhaps it won't look exactly like this, and with the loss of Historian, you could just run Keleseth also pretty easily, since the Shadow Ascendant perhaps wouldn't be worth it anymore. But I can still see this deck working out. On the other Priest front, Control Priest loses the important tools of Potion of Madness, as well as Pint-Sized Potion, Shadow Word Horror, both sides of the combo. It loses the Draconid Operative and the Historians. So that's pretty rough, but this deck has replacement options. You've got the Psychic Scream, and unlike the other dragon decks, since the dragons in this deck are mainly control-ish, you can still put in just bigger dragon cards, such as maybe Bone Drake, maybe a Sarah. You can still put in cards like Shadow Word Death. A lot of cards in the Witchwood, which will fill into this deck pretty well too. Especially with the newest Curator card, Countess Ashmore, revealed. Feels like that could fit into this deck really well. And then you stick in Rush, Lifesteal, and Death Rattle cards, namely Obsidian Statue. The Bone Drake happens to be a Death Rattle too, so those coincide. Lady in White works out really well, especially with Sarah and Obsidian Statue and Primordial Drake. I can see this deck working out pretty well. Sue's been around forever, and sure, it'll lose things. In this case, it's losing the Demon, Synergy cards of Blood Fury Potion, and Crystal Weaver, and the Malchezaar Imp. But, just as always, Zoo will adapt. This time around, perhaps a few of the self-damaging cards can be added as the theme, and it'll be just fine. You'd probably want to cut the Demon Fire, and depends on how good Vulgar Homunculus is, but perhaps it's not good enough by itself to have the Keleseth. Keleseth Zoo is always a thing as well. Zoo finds a way. It'll still be around. And finally, Spell Hunter. Barnes Yashiraj caused Spell Hunter to just have some percentage chance to just win the game by playing Barnes on 4. So with that being cut, deck loses kind of the auto win sometimes. A surprising number of spells stay in, only losing Cat Trick. So the core is still around here. Seems easy enough to perhaps put in the cards that were originally here to create the Spell Hunter deck. The Rockdalar and To My Side. So I suppose the secret to replace it would just be something like Snake Trap, which I've seen around in a few of these decks anyways. So perhaps something like this, it looks mainly intact. Now the problem with losing the Barnes Yashiraj is that was one of the main ways that Spell Hunter got percentage points against Q-Block, because it would be very difficult to deal with the Yashiraj on turn 4. So looks like it'll still be a deck, but perhaps weakened enough by the loss of Barnes Yashiraj and Cat Trick. And finally on tier 2, we've got Secret Mage. One of the counters to Q-Block. Loses the Valet, loses Ice Block, Cabal Crystal Runner rotates, Firelands Portal rotates. Those were some very strong cards, which kind of carried the archetype. Oh, and the Lackey as well. So with the loss of so many Secret Synergy cards, perhaps you don't want to go with these secrets any longer. Explosive Ruin still seems powerful enough. Is it enough to run Kirin Tor Mage on? Maybe not. Arcanologist though is still good. So maybe it's still good enough to run like some sort of Kirin Tor Mage, Explosive Ruins package. I could see the new card Book of Specters easily fitting into this deck. Just cut the Arcane Intellect. That would make for 2, 4, 6, 7, 9, 11, 12 spells in the deck, which is a lot, but in this deck you're not really too sad when you discard cards since you typically don't go through the entire deck. I mean, with Aluneth you kind of do, but Book of Specters is that powerful. And it seems like a reasonable core, and Tempo Mage has been around without the secrets stuff. Alright, now onto the tier 3 decks. Big Priest loses quite a bit. It loses Barnes, which is basically the big reason why Big Priest could operate. Big Priest gained a lot of win percentage due to Barnesing stuff out, and then resurrecting this stuff. It can still do so with Shadow Essence, but boy is that a lot less good. Loses the Clear of Shadow Word Horror plus Pint-Sized Potion as well, and loses the stabilization of Greater Healing Potion, and Dragonfire Potion while you're at it. Poor Big Priest, it's about time that you died by Barnes dying. Worth mentioning is that perhaps Recruit Warrior takes the place of Big Priest, since you don't have to go through the process of having stuff die and then resurrecting it. You just recruit it straight out. We have two different flavors of Hunter here at tier 3. We got the more aggro version. Loses the Alley Cat as a starter turn 1. The Kindly Grandmother was a solid card, but that's it. Hungry Crab will see less play because there will be less Murlocs to eat. We haven't seen the early game Beast from Witchwood for Hunter yet, but perhaps something else will include. Always the possibility of a Baku Hunter coming up as well. Maybe with the Ballista shot, you'll finally be able to push past the Q block defenses and get a more favorable win rate against them. The secret, slightly bigger version of the Face Hunter deck tries to leverage the power of Lesser Emerald Spellstone. Loses one of the strongest secrets in Cat Trick though. And loses very critically the Cloaked Huntress. That's gonna kill quite a lot of the secret power, and those secrets in Lesser Emerald Spellstone are quite good still. Perhaps the loss of Cloaked Huntress might be too much. Lesser Emerald Spellstone is still powerful, and maybe a mid-range Hunter which still runs some secrets will come to take its place. This is mostly in here for completionist, but Jade Druid is obviously going away with every single Jade card rotating out. Kuhn also rotates out. That said though, the base of this Control Druid is still here. We're just looking for a different way to win as Druid now. Maybe Astral Tiger is the way of the future? One of the decks I never got around to building myself, but which ended up picking up steam near the end of the meta, was Exodia Paladin. Run the Uther of the Ebon Blade, use Auction Master Beardo as well as the coins gathered from Burgly Bully to one-turn kill them, and then otherwise just have a good control base. There are a few cards getting rotated here as well. Dirty Rat being one of them, which is going to make the Call to Arms targets quite a bit worse. Auction Master Beardo rotates out. Burgly Bully rotates out. Rallying Blade rotates out. So this is clearly going to change up the Exodia nature of the deck. However, that said, let's get rid of Blessing of Wisdom. It seems like it's going to be less based on cycling. But that said, it looks like this is still a decent core for some sort of mid-range or late-game Paladin control deck. The tools are still here. You put in the True Silver to replace the Blade. You kind of note that a lot of these cards are even, so maybe you just run the Gen deck. You've got that new 4-mana 4/3 robot coming in with the Divine Shield. For big spell mages, they lose out on the disruption of the Dirty Rat, the Ice Block, which was kind of important because you often ran Arcanologist to search for the Ice Block, the only secret that mattered, so therefore you wouldn't really run Arcanologist either. Now that's partly good news for big spell because the Ice Block was a low cost card. You wouldn't need the Skulking Geist anymore because of Jade Druid rotating, Firelands Portal's out, Medivh's out. Although a few of these are kinda not in all of the big spell mage decks. So big spell mage still has big spells. Dragon's Fury still gets Blizzard Meteor and Flame Strike. You don't have the secrets such as Ice Block in order to survive, and you don't have the Valet Arcanologist engine, but you do still have Arcane Artificer for gaining health. Arcane Tyrant is still there, of course. I was actually surprised to find that that particular version didn't have it. You can still run Baron Geddon. Nice way to catch up on health, especially without the Ice Block, I suppose. It looks like Big Spell Mage is still in decent shape. The only reason why it didn't see play really, or didn't see as much play, is because it wasn't very good against Q Block. And Q Block is still around. The no Ice Block is kind of a big deal. Perhaps you move this more towards a Spiteful build, just a decent card there. You might also consider a Spiteful Summoner type mage, incidentally anyways. But ultimately this still tries to win a Frostlich Jaina. Maybe you put in that Grimoire Tome. The draw 3 and discard spells is a small spell, but there aren't that many spells in this deck. And finally, I'm going to give an honorable mention to Spiteful Druid. just because Ultimate Infestation is so powerful with Spiteful Summoner. Decks that run Spiteful Summoner and 10 spells only seem like they could work really well. So here's a pretty good Spiteful Druid core. I expect it to get a lot better in the new expansion. Other honorable mentions include Kingsbane Rogue, Quest Rogue, and Quest Mage. These are all honorable mentions because they are ways that could tackle down Q block.